Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are joining us from for the Boston Consulting Group X Hello Tomorrow webinar on the Green Materials Revolution. As a reminder, the main portion of the webinar will last about 45 minutes with about 15 minutes for Q&A. So please leave your questions in the designated Q&A box. My name is Rainbow Lowe. I'm the chemistry and materials expert here at Hello Tomorrow. And to give you a bit of flavor about what we do, we're a global organization that is really aiming to solve our world's most pressing challenges through innovative deep tech solutions. The way we do this is via four main pillars. So the first is our early stage deep tech startup competition, the Global Challenge, where we select entities which have the most promising and most disruptive technological solutions. We're joined by two of our Global Challenge finalists from last year. In addition, our annual Global Summit held in March in Paris, France, where we connect key change makers. So these are corporates, investors, researchers, and founders. We also work with corporations to really, We also work with corporations to provide tailor-made services on open innovation across industries and sectors. Finally, our investor network, we regularly share investment opportunities and carry out introductions with startups from our community. We're very excited to host today's webinar with BCG, whom we've been working with for a very, very long time, since the launch of one of the first deep tech reports over 6 years ago. Today, we are joined by key change makers in the industry. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you to the team, Thomas, Bardea, Jatin, and my co-moderator for today, Diego from BCG. I would also like to note from dPoly, Sam Anderson has elected her CTO to take place because she was not able to join for the full duration today. So without further ado, please introduce yourselves. I would like Thomas to go first.
Perfect. Thank you, Rainbow. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Thomas Donoghue. I'm Vice President of Industry Innovation at CRH. So CRH is the leading building materials solutions business in the world. We work in 29 countries, operating at more than 3,000 locations, with a workforce of 78,000 colleagues. And we do revenues in the region of 33 billion a year. So innovation and sustainability are deeply embedded in all aspects of our business. I'm very excited to have this conversation today, to hear from the other panelists, and to engage with you, the audience. Thank you.
So Bardea from dPoly, would you like to go next? And then Jatin, and then finally Diego.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Rainbow. And sorry that I'm probably not as nice as Sam, but I'll try to do my best. Yeah, so I'm Bardea. I'm the CTO and one of the co-founders at dPoly. We are an advanced recycling technology working on sustainable recycling of plastics. We provide a solution to recycle dirty and mixed post-consumer PET plastic back into its original chemical components with the energy efficient and low-cost technology by which we essentially remove oil from the value chain of plastic and contributing to our common target of reducing our footprint on this planet.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, everyone. My name is Jatin. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Shinterra. Shinterra is an AI-driven material science company. We radically accelerate the creation of new materials to manufacture and sell using our platform called the Shinterra Design Factory. Basically, it's a platform that combines deep domain knowledge in material science, high throughput experimentation, and artificial intelligence. And through this platform, the first material we've created is CozTerra, C-O-Z, Terra, which are basically a suite of carbon dioxide removing materials, with our first target application for carbon dioxide removing textiles.
Thank you so much. Very exciting. My name is Diego Santamaria. I'm a partner at BCG and a core member of the Deep Tech group. I'm an expert on advanced and green materials, and all my career I have been working at the industrial level, driving innovation in the sustainability space through materials. As part of the Deep Tech offer in BCG, we work with clients on reinventing the value proposition, but also on working on redesigning the products and value chains using groundbreaking emerging technologies. We have been working with Hello Tomorrow, as Rainbow was saying, for a while. We have been an exclusive global consulting partner for many years, and we have produced joint publications, engaged with global events, and mainly fostered a lot with collaborations in between big players, corporates, and startups, with the aim to develop unique solutions for critical challenges. Some of the critical challenges we're facing today are related to the environmental profile of our planet, and there is no doubt that human activities have precipitated into a really profound shift on the way our climate pattern is behaving. And this is affecting not only the climate change due to the environmental or the emissions of carbon dioxide and the concentration of it, but actually it also has affected a lot of other planetary balances. Those balances are called the planetary boundaries, and there are 9. These planetary boundaries are monitored. And the goal of monitoring them is understanding the degree of urgency we need to act to prevent them to overpass a safe operating space. And unfortunately, 6 of those planetary boundaries are already above the space. So they are the climate change, which is the most known of all of them, the biosphere integrity, the land system change, the freshwater change, and the biochemical flows. All together create an imbalance that has creates unprecedented problems on Earth. And these different boundaries have associated facts, numbers. And I think stories become stronger when you tell them with a story. And last week, and I think that's really relevant for how things are changing, there was a horrible hurricane in my home country, in Mexico. The Hurricane Otis hit the Pacific coast of Mexico. The hurricane season was typically from July and June to October, and it was bringing hurricanes all over the year, or all over that period, in both on the Pacific and the Atlantic side. And very rarely hurricanes were Category 5. Over the last years, the period of hurricanes has moved from June to October to April to November, so extending on duration. The frequency of hurricanes has increased dramatically, but what made Otis, the last hurricane, special was the speed on which it transformed from a tropical storm to a hurricane Category 5. So because of the heat wave in June and the highest temperature registered on Earth for the last 100 years, the amount of heat created a thermodynamic flow that accelerated the growth of the hurricane from the tropical storm to Hurricane 5 in less than 24 hours, giving no time to the population to be prepared. And the hurricane reached a 270 kilometers per hour speed in a diameter of almost 50 kilometers. That was just huge. The worst hurricane that has hit Mexican coast, creating unprecedented damage in a city of 1 million inhabitants, Acapulco, that probably will take years to stand up again. And that's just an example of the horrible things happening around the world. And that, for me, is an evidence that we need a change. And this change requires really an understanding how to act to improve the situation, and it requires a holistic examination of the way we operate as a society. The evolution of the planetary boundaries I was explaining before is clearly associated to the growth of industrial activities. The anthropic activity has an impact, and we cannot deny it. Like, there are still groups of people trying to deny the carbon dioxide association to climate change, but that's not the only problem we have today. So also the plastics, we have the planetary boundaries I was mentioning before, and they are all associated to the industrial activity. There are several industrial activities that are contributing to going beyond the safe space on the planetary boundaries, and they are the building industry, the oil and gas, the steel production, energy production, meat production, fertilizers, plastics, how we produce them, how we use them, and many, many other examples that are industries producing in massive amounts and impacting one or the other of the planetary boundaries, and just affecting the way our planet is able to react and regenerate. Those industries have one thing in common. They have several things in common, but in regards to the seminar of the webinar of today, they have one thing in common, and is that they are either the source, the channel, the manufacturer, or the user, even the market of traditional materials. And each material we use has a specific environmental impact associated to it. We simply don't think about it. It would be unthinkable to request the population to stop consuming. And although my personal view is that we all should consume less, that's probably not the way things will get improved. What we can do is we can try to shift from traditional materials to green materials. And the first thing you ask yourself is, well, but what green materials are? So basically, the material impact can be associated to different points of its own life. The whole production life of, the whole product life of a product impacts in a different way the environmental footprint it has. It's not only, as I said, about carbon dioxide, but all the planetary boundaries associated to the life of the product. The way we look at it is from a value chain perspective. So we look at the way the primary materials have been extracted, how those materials were transported from the source to the production side, the kind of energy we use to transform the materials, the efficiency of the waste management of the production process, how the material is transported after it has been produced, how it's used over its life, how it's used after the life and it has served its primary purpose, and how it is reintegrated into a new life. And when answering and measuring with numbers all these questions, we have an idea of the reference environmental impact of current materials has. So that's, let's say, a baseline. When you have a baseline, then you are able to move towards a greener material. So you have a traditional material, and as a definition, I would say green materials are those that can improve the impact they have on any of the planetary boundaries in comparison to the reference traditional materials have at any point of their life. In construction, by example, environmental product declarations are a good starting point that quantifies environmental information of the life cycle of a product, and that enables the comparison between products fulfilling similar functions. And that's where corporates really play an important role. Because of their massive global presence, they can either impact by starting measuring and defining proper life cycle analysis, by example, environmental product definitions. And once they have this measured properly, they can start having and executing strategies at the innovation level to improve the impact of those products. And I think it's natural to ask you, Thomas, what is your point of view on the importance of green materials, and what are you doing as a corporate to address the topic?
Thanks, Diego. Well, look, echoing the message that you just made, I think green materials are hugely important, and there are key elements in the development of those. I suppose the way I think about green materials is it's all about innovation and efficiency, right? You mentioned the construction industry. 25% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from the construction sector. Somewhere in the region of 7 to 8% stem from cement production. And so I think it's incumbent upon us when we talk about green materials, it's really about developing low carbon alternatives, number one. Two, it's about conserving natural resources, right? It's just not about the technology and creating low carbon. We have to find ways to conserve natural resources. And the third is about taking byproducts and looking at opportunities to convert waste to value so that we can unlock circularity. So I suppose I consider green materials as foundational to transforming our industry. If we want to reach the net zero goals that we have committed to and that others in industry have committed to, but also to leave a positive impact on society. The other side of it is, as you develop new green materials, durability is essential, right? They're going to have a longer useful life. There's going to be more demands on infrastructure, particularly as we look at trends around urbanization, etc. So I think they're just some examples. In terms of what we're doing at CRH, well, we have more than 50 exciting initiatives underway, both in-house and in partnership with others. If I speak about a couple of examples, just to ground the conversation. From an in-house perspective, we have a really interesting technology called CarbonJect. That's a proprietary technology that was developed within CRH through one of our colleagues in Canada. And what that technology does, in summary, it injects and sequesters CO2 in concrete. And you're able to achieve somewhere in the region of about 10 kgs of CO2 per cubic meter. So what does that mean? Well, it means you can increase your compressive strength by up to 5%. Then you can reduce your cement content, which has a direct correlation with the carbon intensity of that product. Therefore, you can reduce your carbon content. From an external perspective, right, so the other side of it, some of the things we're working on, particularly in the context of deep tech, we're looking at artificial intelligence. One use case is for mixed design optimization in concrete. Now, this is a collaboration with an external startup, AIcrete, and that was structured through our corporate venture capital arm, which is one of the levers that we use, so CRH Ventures. So what this solution does, it actually looks at optimizing from multiple different angles. The first is cost, then you have carbon output. You also look at performance in the concrete, and then finally logistics. So there's a lot of potential here, and these are just a couple of the examples that we're looking at in a suite of much broader efforts.
Fantastic. I would love to touch point also a little bit on the deep tech solutions and really, what is the interface between deep tech and green materials? So like Diego and Thomas were saying previously, it's really important to look at the value chain. So if we're looking at some of the analysis that we've done in-house at Hello Tomorrow, there are key gaps. If I was to summarize and I also simplify a little bit in terms of what Diego was saying, in terms of the value chain, essentially we've got the beginning of life, so the manufacture, production, etc. We've also got the middle of when you're using the actual product, and then also the end of life. And currently, if you look at materials, polymers, etc., even with, for instance, cement, construction industry, etc., there are key gaps. So, for instance, to generate and to manufacture cement, it takes a lot of energy, and it also produces a lot of CO2 emissions. So if you're using things like renewable feedstock, if you're actually using things which actually reduce either the carbon dioxide emissions or increases the longevity of a certain product, or maybe you even have a way of making it more efficient. So processes which you can actually reduce either wastewater management, use less of the carbon dioxide producing materials, etc. So I think in order to actually concretely grasp what this actually means, I would love to bring in Dipoli and also Shinterra as really two of our examples of what we can really do when we work together and really focusing on different aspects of the value chain. So either at the beginning, the middle, or the end. So I'd like to rope you in, Badia and Jatin, to discuss a little bit more about the disruptive technologies that you're working at Dipoli and also Shinterra.
Thank you very much, Rainbow. Yes, happy to contribute and also to build on what Diego and Thomas said. I think I very much agree that the main thing that needs is to be done is the shift of focus toward the impact, as Diego put it very nicely. I believe that our the conventional industry has so far has been operating based on the profit and performance, and I think now is the time that the impact will become one of those main criteria when we are looking at our industries and the way our operation works. And I think there is where the solution is innovation. I can give you an example, which is plastic is a very nice example of that. When the plastics were made, if you look at it as a material, it's a fantastic material. It performs really well. It's light. It has a high durability, as Thomas said. But at the time, no one looked at its impact. So then it would basically spread out to all sort of applications, even though we build a material that can last for basically 500 years, and the span of use of that material is only 20 minutes that we use it, and then we trash it. So we build material that can last for so long, but we use it very shortly. And that's essentially the missing point of not looking into the impact of those changes. And I think there is now where we have an established industry in a variety of different areas, from chemical industry, oil and gas, construction, that needs to now shift toward the impact. And as we all know, we have a society that is already functioning, and to change all those massive infrastructures requires a lot of effort and investment. So the solution essentially there is innovation, how we can find new ways of doing all things. As Diego put it very nicely, it's very difficult to imagine our way of life drastically changing. So we need to find new ways of doing the same old thing, but with lower and lower impact.
And Jatin, to hear your side of the story as well.
Yeah, so I mean, Bhartia, you've written the rest of what I want to say right there, actually. So maybe I'll contextualize this with how Shinterra's sort of brought about a little bit of an innovation change, and really this goes back to the whole premise of Rainbow's larger question, which is how is a deep tech solution a suitable alternative to the way things are done now? And I want to talk a little bit about startups, because Bhartia and I both come from startups. It goes without saying that startups can be extremely agile. And this is, I think, one of the core strengths that we want to play towards. And I'll talk a little bit about the creation of COSTERRA and bring it back to what Bhartia mentioned earlier. So COSTERRA is Shinterra's suite of carbon removing materials. And a little over a year ago, Shinterra started on this journey to innovate new carbon removal materials using our platform of AI and high throughput experimentation. And this platform is fairly domain agnostic when we started. And so we started with no equipment, no data on carbon removal, and a very cursory high level knowledge of carbon dioxide capture. So we built bespoke material. So the first in the world, very low CapEx, very low OpEx, but extremely high accuracy to measure carbon removal. And then we built a database of about 120 materials, out of which 2/3 don't exist or hadn't existed, and there's no evidence in literature of its existence. And then we verticalized this to be applied in textiles, filed a patent, and we did all of this in 11 months. And so this was the agility, in part because we're a small startup, in a larger part because of our platform. But ultimately, what we have is, a technology which is a carbon removing textile. It's a T-shirt that you can wear that removes carbon dioxide. You don't need to change the way you interact with your clothes, because the mechanism is really simple. You wear your T-shirt, you capture carbon dioxide, you put it in the wash. That carbon dioxide is sequestered into a mineral that can be washed away, and your T-shirt is recharged. It doesn't change the way a consumer interacts with their clothes. All they need to do is make a conscious decision at checkout or at the shop floor to buy that. And really, this is essentially what needs to come about. And there are many, many examples where it's sort of a drop in. It's meant to either drop into an existing industrial process, or it's meant to drop into an existing consumer process, or the production is drop in, but it's a new market. It's kind of like how a little bit like how smartphones came about as well. It was using technology that already existed. They put things together. They made a couple of tweaks and a couple of innovations, and now we can't imagine life without a smartphone. In fact, I don't think anybody that I know does not have a smartphone. So that's really the change that startups can bring. That innovative, disruptive change where you don't change the way you behave and interact with your technology, but and once you adopt it, you cannot imagine life without it. So that's where the key of innovation lies.
And I would also like to add one final sentence into that. And essentially, when we're talking about deep tech, I know some of the audience who may be joining us for the first time are like, what is a deep tech solution? Essentially, these are disruptive emerging technologies. And what we love working with disruptive technologies is the fact that it's forward-looking, forward-facing. So if we think about traditional materials, a lot of these things are, they've been known for decades. The way that you process it, the way that you make it, and then the way that you dispose or deal with it at the end of life. The fact that we've got these new technological innovations coming through, for instance, I'm imagining this T-shirt that can take away and sequester all this carbon dioxide, or the fact that, for instance, at the end of life for plastic waste, we can literally have a way to efficiently process this. And I think this is what's really important about deep tech. And these are the emerging solutions that really can make a difference and change the world. So we've heard a lot about, all these good, fantastic technologies, even from AI, from new chemical processes, also from biotech. But in terms of, I know at the beginning of the call, when we were discussing at the back room, Jatin was also even discussing, there's a lot of barriers and challenges. I was wondering whether you could touch upon those, because clearly these are technological solutions that have the huge potential to make a difference. But in terms of what challenges are you guys facing? Like, can you expand upon that as well? So I'd like to hear from both Bardea and Jatin. I think it probably makes more sense to go with Bardea first, and then we can also ask Jatin too.
Yeah, of course. I think Jatin mentioned it very nicely, that the important factor that we are, if we all agree that we are in a urgent situation regarding of our planet and the global warming situation, then one of the key factors of making that shift and change is the speed of that. And Jatin very good mentioned the agility of the startups, that they can bring that change with the desired speed that we need to act now. And we all know that in the corporate world, making change is quite a long process, and I mean it's for a reason that is like that, and that is where the role of innovation and deep tech will come, which they can address the very important and basic challenges of our current industries, but they can address it fast and effective. And I think there is where also then the role of open innovation will come into a picture, where that there needs to be a collaboration where the corporates also open the door and to the startups to come to the market and address some of these challenges. So we all as an industry can move forward. I personally believe that the next if you call it the unicorn of this decade is not going to be another company who delivers your food or your products fast. Is going to be a company who address one or several of our very basic challenges that we are facing, especially relating to global warming.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think, and even in the chat, there are some questions I think are relevant from different people, saying that innovation is important, the speed of it is also important, but the profitability of it is as equal. It has equal importance. So probably when thinking about what the startups can bring and what the corporates can bring at the same time, It's like talking about, and maybe what I'm going to say sounds a bit like a non-logical sentence, but it's like two convergent parallel lines. No? Like there are two worlds running in the same direction, but not converging. And the convergence point, which is somehow the vanishing point in perspective, should be as closer as possible. This speed of the acceleration of where the startup world and the corporate world meets should help, on the one side, the agility for the startups, for the corporates, and on the other side, the access to data and so on from the corporate to the startup.
Which is actually a perfect segue, because now we've heard from, what is the startups barriers from the startups perspective, but also I'd love to hear in terms of, the corporate side, like what are you guys thinking? What is your view, Thomas?
Yeah, look, I think it's really important to recognize these challenges. And I think these types of conversations actually help draw awareness to it, but also help us to draw greater alignment. And so, like the barriers mentioned are not unfamiliar territory. So, Bardia did a good job of capturing it and sort of describing the corporate dynamic, but they are somewhat, I would say, universal to innovation. And if we want to accelerate that, we have to find ways to overcome these barriers. So I guess from a corporate perspective, the challenge is that especially at the scale that we operate, 29 countries, more than 3,000 operating locations, there are a lot of competing solutions. And so you really need to be tactical about where you commit your resources and your effort. And what you want to do is try and cut through some of that noise to really find the high impact opportunities. And so what that means is you really need to understand that the solution you're looking at is technically feasible and that it works, right? But it's also got to be scalable. And I think sometimes when people hear scalable, they think about just replicating it at the next location, the next project, the next manufacturing facility, et cetera. But it's actually more than that, right? Scaling is about integrating into the existing systems. And I think that's a key part to scaling successfully. And so there's an element of change management there, right? As you bring new solutions into the fold, you really have to get the organization aligned and adapted to integrating that. The third piece is it's capital intensive, right? As you start to make all these small engagements, collaborations, investments, you're sort of spreading the risk, if you will. But as you scale up, it starts to become more capital intensive from both sides, right? You're expecting the startup to engage in more detail with more resources, but similarly on the corporate side, you're starting to make greater investment and starting to really narrow your focus. And so I think what we want to do is we have to add value and not destroy it. That I think is essential from the corporate perspective. And so this includes, working collaboratively with startups, but at the same time, we have to act in the interest of our shareholders, aligned to our broader business commitments, right? And so from the CRH perspective, that's about driving performance in waste, in decarbonization, in water. We have to keep that in mind as we make these engagements. So I suppose to summarize, I think it's about more engagement earlier in the process, being very clear about the objectives on both sides. What are you trying to achieve? And also having alignment around the direct and in-kind resources that both sides are going to bring to the table. I think if you can have those conversations, you will ultimately drive better collaboration and better outcomes. And back to Diego's original point, you should unlock greater impact in the solutions that you're trying to deliver.
And Thomas, touching a bit on the open innovation space, so the interaction in between the large corporates and the startups. You mentioned the technology availability, the scalability, the deliver results for the stakeholders, which is related to the profitability of the technology and the fit with markets, and at the same time, the match with the existing assets and systems.
Yeah.
What do you think should be the balance between, by example, the internal developments a company should have as a corporate with R&D centers and the external developments coming from an open innovation approach? Open innovation in the sense of working with startups developing something, or investing on startups developing something. So what's the specific advice you would give to corporates in relation to open innovation strategies?
Yeah. I mean, just on the R&D and open innovation, I think doing both is essential, right? In the current age, you have to build capacity in your R&D capabilities, but I think the other side of it with open innovation, right? So a robust open innovation program, in my opinion, is essential if you want to achieve your goals as an organization. But I think more importantly, in industry, the commitments that have been made, if we want to move the needle, I think there needs to be more well-structured open innovation programs. And the reason for that is when we talk about hitting net zero, decarbonizing our industry, moving the needle on productivity, these are huge challenges, right? These are challenges that are too large to tackle as one institution alone. And so you need to tap greater resources, bring a more diverse perspective. And I think from the CRH perspective, the reason we're doing that is we recognize, there are great innovators and ideators internal, but there are a ton of great ideas that are outside. And so we want to bring that outside in perspective on innovation. If you have a good open innovation program, you can help accelerate the innovation cycle. You can partner with those external innovators and the startups, and you can move faster. If you do that, I think you can drive more efficiency, and you also have greater access to expertise. Now, the serendipitous outcome that you hope is that you promote this culture of learning and transformation, right? Both within the organization, but also across the industry. So, I think that's maybe some of the advice I would have, is to really invest in that. If I was to think through how you can build that, I think it's about creating the right platforms. So to give you an example, within CRH, we have a platform, our open innovation platform called the Innovation Center for Sustainable Construction. That is comprised of a network of about 100 different individuals, subject matter experts, connected on multiple challenges in industry, and they're all across the company. And they're partnering with internal and external innovators. Now, the goal is if we can enable these partnerships, we can actually drive more change. Now, other examples of things we're trying to do, sort of related to the open innovation platform, is to create platforms like accelerators or incubators. One example, we just launched and closed rather an accelerator for water solutions that was run through our CRH Ventures team. Now, we thought that was a hugely overlooked area. And so by creating this platform, we were able to stem innovation and ideation in that area, which started to generate solutions. And now there's the opportunity to partner with those companies. The other things I think to be mindful of are, be flexible on the IP solutions. When you get into this, and I think, Jatin mentioned it, his cycle time to get to, a patent filing that's almost record breaking, well done on that. That's fantastic. I think you have to create win-win for both sides. Both sides are contributing IP. There is an element and recognition that, you need to grow and demonstrate value, but it can't be at the expense of the other. So if you're setting up a good program and you're working with startups, I think you have to balance the expectation so that you don't constrain the growth of the startup. And so being clear about the IP, the contributed IP, new IP is essential, particularly in deep tech. Just given the nature of what you're doing, it will generate IP, and you need clear boundaries around how that will be managed. So I think they're just some of the thoughts I have on, open innovation, how it works, how you can enable the right type of open innovation and across the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that's also quite promising that we're seeing across the sector, or across sectors even, is a lot of people are now, and companies are really investing in open innovation. So previously, there was a stereotype where, the companies would work behind sort of like a black box, and they would work, in secrecy, and everyone was in competition. And of course, now we're trying to work together towards different solutions. So, like Thomas was saying, in terms of platforms and having the right infrastructure in place, I think is incredibly, incredibly important. And one of the things that, I think is absolutely fantastic is at the beginning, I framed how Hello Tomorrow are working and what we're trying to do really to try and solve some of these world challenges is, for instance, if we look back at the Global Summit, there was a whole open innovation peer sharing session, which was dedicated specifically to, how can corporates work better with startups? Like, what are the actual concrete information and things that they need to do that will facilitate this change? And Thomas touched on it absolutely beautifully in terms of managing expectations. Like, when you enter this partnership and this collaboration, what are the kind of IP, what are the arrangements? What is, if there's going to be an exchange of some sort, what is the value proposition, both for the corporate, but is also for the startup? Like, is this an exchange of facilities, resources, etc.? The other thing that I think is absolutely fantastic is, like I said, we work with corporations in order to help solve some of their key technical challenges. If I think back to earlier this year, we had one of these challenges with one of our partners, L'Oreal, and one of the key things that they were trying to work on was green sciences and how, they could become more sustainable. And I know everyone keeps on throwing out that term in terms of sustainability and circularity. It's like which type of stakeholders and which type of technologies were really going to help with their priorities. And I think having even a webinar like this to raise awareness of, the fact that we need more of these partnerships. And I think this is one of the key take home messages of today is, to influence change, we need partnerships. So this is partnerships either between corporates and startups, etc. But if we don't have these partnerships, it's going to be really difficult to accelerate this change to actually make an impact. So those were my 2 cents. And of course, I can see Bardea and also Jatin agreeing and furious nodding. So I'd love to also hear your thoughts about this too, because from looking at the global perspective from our side and also from the corporate side, it's very easy for us to say we need to have these partnerships. But also in terms of the startup side, is there going to be something that would be concretely really helpful for you guys? So Bardea, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think Thomas summarized it quite well. What I would like to add to that is having a clear roadmap. I would call it the roadmap from the very beginning, where you manage all the expectation. That's a very good way to start. But if I may also touch upon the one of the comments that was raised from the audience about the profitability of solutions that you are bringing to the markets, especially in the deep tech domains, profitability usually comes with the scale. And as Thomas said, reaching that scale is a very capex intensive endeavor. And to be able to do that in some of the domains of deep tech is simply out of the resources of a startup. So there is I think the part where the corporate roles becomes much more highlighted. So what I think is can be added to that partnership is the mindset of risk sharing between both parties, where because a scaling of a technology, as Thomas mentioned earlier, comes with certain risk and requires a lot of effort and resources. And these are the things that needs to be managed by both parties. So essentially, you can use the powers of each party to make sure you have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and I think if I may add, I think one of the challenges is for a startup would be to find the right partner or the right early adopters as soon as possible. I think that's really the point of entry. And you're talking about risk sharing and, with a corporate going in, co-developing a lot of stuff. I think a lot of that comes with the right early adopters. So really very early on in your innovation adoption curve. If you go to a lot of these big corporates, they tend to be very, very risk averse, and they rarely want to hold the hand of a young startup. Whereas if you go with these hungry, sort of slightly smaller, or maybe not even smaller, but slightly more risk, those with a slightly higher risk appetite, this is really what sparks that first piece, that first development, and then you can sort of cross your T's and dot your I's with all the certifications and all the testing and all the extensive sort of validation that you may need for your particular technology.
That's fantastic. So we are done with the main proportion of our webinar, and now we're entering our Q&A. So if you do have more questions, please ask them in the designated Q&A chat. And if there's any issues with the Q&A, I think someone called Paul said that there was an issue. Feel free to ask that in the main chat as well. We've already had a couple. I will go through them. You can also upvote if you have a burning question. So one from Pascal Bal. Sorry if I butcher your name, I'm so sorry. Boldo is saying, are you bringing the innovation technologies you've developed to industrial scale, or how can you get incumbents to adopt them? I am assuming that this is directed to our finalists, our challenge finalists. So Jatin, you have mentioned something. Would you like to elaborate live also?
Sure, yeah, so it actually goes back to the last thing that I just spoke about. So yes, Coursera or Shintera is bringing technologies to industrial scale. We're about a week away, or a week or 2 weeks away from our first industrial scale trial. There are lots of unknown unknowns. We don't know what's going to happen when we run that. We're aware of the fact that we don't know a lot of things, and things could go wrong. But we have a really good partner with us on this, and who's more than willing to hold our hand. They know the tricks of their trade, we know the tricks of ours, and we're bringing that knowledge together. And this is really the key towards adopting technology. It's finding those early adopters quick, and then of course ensuring that you do have product market fit. Obviously, it's kind of redundant if you don't have product market fit, and then you're out searching for early adopters, or if it's not the right time and the right place for that technology as well. So that's really the key challenge here. How do you figure out product market fit is a slightly more complicated answer, and will probably take really, really long. So I won't go into that.
Yeah, and if in our side, yes, we are also we are at the pre-industrialization step. We are building a plant right now in Switzerland, which will start its operation toward the end of next year, and which allow the recycling of the post-consumer plastic waste from the Switzerland, and then after that we are planning to expand on a industrial scale with our partners as well.
And maybe if I could add from the corporate perspective, I think this is the exact type of thinking that we look for, right? When we engage early technology and we're trying to identify, does it have value? We also want to understand, and Badia used the term roadmap. Is there a roadmap to bring it to scale? And that's what we look for. And yes, there will be unknowns. And I think that's part of the innovation journey. But having clarity around where we can bring this to scale, how we can apply it, where it's going to add value is absolutely essential. And I think that will drive the right type of partnerships with corporates and between corporates and startups.
Diego, do you have anything else to add, or should we move on to the next?
No, I think we can move to the next one.
Okay, fantastic. So I know some people are saying that the chat, the Q&A functionality is not working. So I'm going to switch between the two. Someone called Pearl Gray has asked, is the movement away from the extractive linear industry and integration of green materials and more circularity to show the increased use? And secondly, is there any information and lessons learned sharing for where materials didn't work, or tweaks that are made in order to reduce redundant learning opportunities? Who would like to take that?
I'd like to take this one. About the linearity of the traditional materials industry and the extraction, transformation, utilization, and disposal. We mentioned at the beginning of the webinar that part of the work we need to do to create or transform the traditional materials into green materials is looking at the value chain. Probably I didn't mention the fact that the linear production cycles require a circularity process, but the way I did it indirectly was by saying finding a new life after the primary purpose of a material has been achieved. That means when having a traditional approach to production of materials, you extract, transform, and dispose, and in the green materials space, you extract either from a primary resource or a secondary resource, urban mining or waste management, something that has already been used. And before you start transforming, you design the product, the new material, to be ready to get reintroduced in a second life. And that's how you, on the one side, reduce extraction and depletion of primary materials, but also how you accelerate on the transformation on a second life. I think Bardilla was saying the life of plastics is, the use of plastics is for 20 minutes, where the lifespan is hundreds of years. And I think that's a very good example on how materials can be designed for the purpose and duration they are needed, and at the same time, designed to be decomposed or separated in a way that they can get back to the source without losing performance and without increasing the extraction and depletion of materials. And I think that's what you are doing, guys. So that's with the poly, that's exactly the direction you are getting. And if you coordinate a collaboration and a partnership with somebody actually producing the plastics, you can design from the beginning to make your life easier. And that somehow also opens the space for collaboration between corporates and startups. So rethinking the way materials are done, but also rethinking the way the value chain is organized. The profitability of new solutions depends not only on the fact that they will replace a traditional material and then will be cheaper, because most of the times new green materials won't be cheaper. So the way you need to do it is find within the space of maneuver of the industrial solutions a new way to modify the business model that guarantees the success from a financial perspective of your new products in a context that is not willing to pay for more for it. And this is either having entrance fees of waste materials, reducing the cost of traditional raw materials because you are using a secondary one, reducing the energy consumption, making shorter production lines, shifting the production from global production sites to local production sites with lower assets investment. So there are a lot of ways of analyzing it, and I think that's where deep tech models work very well. So that's, I think, answering somehow the linear and circularity question.
Absolutely. I couldn't have put it better myself. I think the key thing is really transforming the business model, and that is absolutely key. If we think back in terms of like the key takeaway messages, it's definitely looking at the business model, looking at how things are done now, looking at beginning of life, what's happening at the middle, and also what's at the end. Currently, like Diego was also saying, is at the moment, say if we look at the general lifespan of a plastic bottle, you use it, you make it, you manufacture it, use it. What do you do at the end? You either put it into landfill, which actually a majority of the plastics, unfortunately, go into landfill. But we have new deep tech solutions, like, for example, Depoly, where they're proposing to take all of these plastic bottles, depolymerize it or break it down into its substituent parts, and then reuse it as renewable and sustainable feedstocks, and then re-putting it back and closing the loop, which is, I guess, the key thing. And this would only be possible with partnerships. And partnerships is definitely the most important thing for startups, for corporations, and also for us going forward as a society. Like we were saying, looking at the value chain again, Jatin and Shintera, they're really focusing at the beginning. So how can we design better materials? What kind of way can we use these materials either to degrade, either to be able to easier dismantle, or for recycling at the end of life? And I think having this overview is one of the most important things to have. It's not going to be, we're just going to recycle. That is not the solution. We really have to tackle each single gap of the value chain, looking from the beginning, middle, and also the end. I know time is going by absolutely quickly. One thing that I would love to hear from each of our speakers today is, from all the juicy things that we've spoken about, what is the one thing that you would say is the most important that you would love the audience to take home today? So I would start with Diego.
Thank you. Well, I would like to emphasize that we are facing a situation on our society that has new challenges ahead. And when I say new challenges, there are environmental, social, workforce, many challenges that will come in the next years. Those are challenges that will create problems, but also create opportunities. And that also answers some of the questions related to how to motivate young people. I think the young people have the opportunity to start working on the new solutions for those new problems by using the existing platforms, corporates, for example, universities, academia, and so on, and start thinking on how the world will look like in the future and how they want the world to look after they leave it. So for the next generations. And that means working on creating new concepts, executing the concepts into ideas, scaling them up, partnering with relevant people with the experience that can scale to industrial levels, and then making sure that on the one side you are motivated because you are letting a better world for the next generation, and on the other side you are busy with actually creating value for stakeholders and for yourself. So that would be for me the key message.
Fantastic. We only have 3 minutes left, so I would love a whistle-stop tour from Tomas, Bardea, and also Jatin.
Yeah, perfect. Look, what a time to be in this field. I think the future is ours to shape. So my closing message would be curious through collaboration and bold innovation. Let's challenge conventional thinking, promote better solutions, and I think that will allow us to reinvent the way our world is built for generations to come.
Yeah, I second that message. Is very well said. What I would add only to that is that we bring one more factor into our way of thinking, and is how what we do will impact us and also the future. I think that is one of the other things that we need to add to our criteria, the way we operate, we behave, and we live.
Yeah, couldn't have framed it better. And ultimately, I think that's exactly it, right? That is exactly what green materials are, which is that materials that solve sustainability challenges without creating new problems of their own. And I think thinking about these problems in a holistic, broader sense, while continuing to keep that curious spark and that innovative spark alive, I think that is really where the outlook, where we should be looking at.
Fantastic. Just on cue. So without further ado, I would love to thank all of our speakers today, Tomas, Bardea, Jatin, and Diego. Thank you so much for your time, and also thank you so much to the audience as well. If you're interested in hearing more about Hello Tomorrow's activities and also BCG's activities, we will be at the Global Summit, so feel free to interact with us, sign up to the newsletters, interact with us on LinkedIn, or even attend to the Global Summit happening in March next year in Paris, France. And with that, thank you again to all of our guests and also to all of our speakers. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day wherever you are in the world. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye.
Good.